All right, now I'm going to focus on just kind of adding different elements from the element packs and using those in your kind of design and how to just add pieces, take away pieces, do some different things with your designs. So this is the coaster that I made originally again. Um, I just kind of got rid of the braking region at the end. So we're going to kind of build off of this region right here, just so I don't have to rebuild a completely new coaster. So again, looking from my different views, right, front, left view, so I'm going to kind of build out this direction. You can see this part of the track is a lot lower than some of the other parts, so I kind of drop down here with this helix. And again, looking in left view and then also in 3D view, which if I control and click, I can kind of see where I'm going to be building. I'm going to be building from right about there. So kind of out in this direction. So one thing to note, you cannot build in 3D mode. You can only, what you can do, so if you go to top view, we'll go to front view because that'll give us a good look from the side of what we're looking at. So this is actually closest to us. It's out towards us, so like the hill's kind of in the back of the screen three-dimensionally. This is out towards the front of us. So let's pretend that I want to add say a loop. We'll just do a vertical loop. So I can go to File. I go to Insert Element. I might add something different, but here's your options. Like here's 5 different options that are just kind of part of No Limits. But then also what you need to look into is the element packs because there's a lot of other different elements you can look at and start to add. So element pack, they have a lot of stuff. Some of the stuff is kind of, just the same. It's just bigger or smaller. But you're able to scale everything when you add it into No Limits each time. So, for example, let's say we want to add that loop. So double click it, hit open. So here's where I can scale it. You don't really know size, you just gotta kind of play around with it. So 100%, and then some of them are labeled like how high they are, but you just gotta kind of judge it, and then you can also always undo and redo. So I'm gonna make it 1.5 times the scale, so 150. And that's a decent size loop, right? It's not quite as high as my hill. It's a decent kind of loop that I have there. And it does everything kind of perfectly for me. So we don't have to worry about trying to build these loops because then a lot of the time they don't end up coming out quite how we need them. So the key thing to note is whenever you're building and adding track, it's going to add directly out from where you currently are. So if I go back to the top view, you can see that loop came straight out from where I was before. Now, if I go back to left view, right? So nope, front view is where I was. I was in front view, right? I can see my loop. So everything's good to go there. And I would add that loop. Now, if I wanted to obviously get rid of it, and I'm like, I don't want a loop, or I want a different size loop. If it's in the end of your track, you can just undo it, right? Now, if it's in the middle of your track, you're going to have a lot more problems getting rid of it. So you really need to be sure that you want to get rid of that loop or get rid of something before you actually do it. So that kind of covers the insert element. So obviously you have all those other things. Now, if I'm just going to want to add track, best way to do that, no, there's not really a best way. It depends which view you want to be in. So if I click back to add track, so here, I'm going to add track segment. Wherever I click, again, more pieces or less pieces, the better. So if I click way out here, right, it's going to make a piece from where the cursor is now back to where that blue dot is. So if I click, boom, I've got track. And this is where, again, I need to look at my different views to see, okay, is that track straight? Is it crooked? What's going on? So go to top view. I start there, right? So that is one key thing to look at, right? So if I go back to left view, nope, front view, sorry. That track looks like it's going, straight out in front, right, of where it was before. But when I go to top view, I can see that that thing is coming out towards me if I was in left view before. So I'm going to need to go back up here, click the cursor, and kind of move that in the direction that I want it to go. And also kind of bring this vertex around so it's lined up. So maybe I want it to do more of a curve kind of thing, and I can start to bring this around to show that curved feature. So the vertices just kind of allow you to kind of extend the track and lengthen it from the piece you already have. So you don't need to make it longer or shorter, but you don't want obviously too many pieces, but then you can just kind of move things out and around and then, make that curve more, subtle or a lot tighter, things like that. So it's just going to elongate your track in different ways. So then I could bring this vertex in. Oops. I could bring this one in, which doesn't really change anything because nothing's connected to it right now. But I see the different changes I can make as I move this. So let's say, I'm good there. I added that piece of track. Now, one other thing we need to talk about. So I'm going to go back to, actually go back to 3D view for this. So there's my turn I just made. We know from this coaster, I come into this turn really fast. So something we talked about before was banking turns. So we are able to do that a couple different ways. The main thing is you need to rely on these vertices. So if I double click on this, I can see what's called rolling. It's called rolling here instead of banking. But we can look at different relative continuous. It doesn't necessarily matter too much. But what I can do, so I'm going to go zoom in a little closer here, just so we can see that actually that happening, that curvature happening. So you see this yellow line, it's called the heart line. So that's where the mass of the person that would be riding your coaster would kind of be. We want to try to keep that as towards the center of the track as we possibly can. So you can see that it kind of goes way out here. On this part of the coaster, it's not really around that center section of the track. It kind of goes out. Again, that's where your body's going to tend to go on a curve like this. So what I can do again, so if I double click this, bring up the rolling, I can start to increase it or decrease it. So negative is going to roll it outward, so that line goes outward, which is not what we necessarily want to do. We're going to make it want to bring it positive, so bring it inward. So I can start to roll it just a little bit, 40-degree turn, 40-degree banking, 30-degree banking. Just kind of depends, obviously, on how big your curve is, how big everything is. But that's how I'm going to be able to bank and roll the turn. So I can always go back to 0. And then I can bank that in, which will allow, less of that G-force. And then you can just you have to test it and see, is that enough? And then I can go back and say, nope, that wasn't quite enough. So let's bank it just a little more so that we can kind of alleviate some of those G-forces. So again, if I start to look here, right, I've got, that's not where I want to go. Like this, right? I can start to see it's a little better, right? It's coming towards the center a little more with that banking. So I could obviously probably bank it a little more to bring that heart line a little more over the track, that yellow line there. So that kind of covers banking, adding pieces of track, doing different things. Now, one thing that you can also do when you're working on this is if I click here, I can delete pieces of track or delete these vertices. So if I say I want to get rid of this vertice, it's going to make this entire section before just one kind of piece. So I can click on the vertice itself, hit delete. So it doesn't delete all of my track, it just gets rid of that vertice, so that piece that was separate, two separate pieces, is now kind of one piece right here. So that's something you can do as you're kind of working if you just want to be able to control more track, just to kind of straighten things out or level them out, whatever you might be doing. You can kind of do that by deleting vertices. So again, the less of those blue dots, the better. But just trying to keep as little pieces of track, as few pieces of track as you need.